72% of the world lives under authoritarian leaders. Think about that. The majority of humanity lives under governments that silence free speech, punish dissent, and control information. We like to imagine that America is just different, that it's the land of the free and authoritarianism could never happen here. But look closer. In less than a year in Trump's America, students are being deported for having different political views. Comedians are being pressured into silence. ICE raids are tearing through communities. The National Guard is already deployed in American cities. There's not going to be a press release announcing that democracy is over. Authoritarianism advances step by step. By the time authoritarianism declares itself, it's already too late. So why is this happening? One of the biggest drivers is social media. Lies spread faster than truth. Misleading headlines and false narratives greatly outpace research context because clicks and outrage make money. We've already seen where this can lead. In my motherland, the Philippines, former President Rodrigo Duterte weaponized social media during his campaign and presidency. Troll farms, coordinated disinformation, and propaganda networks flooded Facebook and YouTube. And it worked.
This nest of 26 fake accounts are connected to 970,000 Facebook pages, and those are connected to more than 3.3 million accounts that are connected to Facebook pages of Duterte.
His war on drugs left thousands dead in extrajudicial killings, while his propaganda framed this as law and order. Duterte's influence continues even after leaving office, with his allies and his networks and even his own daughter still holding power. But for these crimes, the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for his arrest in March of 2025. Filipino authorities ended up detaining him and sending him over to The Hague, and now he's on trial at the ICC. One of the few times a former president has been held accountable for crimes committed in office. This shows the cost of normalizing authoritarian tactics. The lies, the propaganda, the violence. Look, this playbook isn't unique to the Philippines. Trump is using a similar strategy in the United States, leveraging social media to attack the press, delegitimizing fact-checking, and ultimately creating an alternate reality for his supporters. Both leaders showed how platforms meant to connect people could be repurposed as megaphones for authoritarianism. Look, this isn't accidental. Capitalism as it exists fuels it. Outrage is profitable. Disinformation is profitable. The incentive structure rewards engagement at any cost. Look, authoritarianism is already here. If this still seems abstract to you right now, I think you need to look a little closer. Students supporting Palestine are being harassed, blacklisted, and even deported. Mahmoud Khalil forced out despite a valid visa, punished for his politics. Comedians like Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert are being pressured into silence when their satire hurts MAGA's feelings. Free speech is supposed to be bedrock in America, but yet it's already eroding. Add in ICE raids tearing families apart, and the National Guard being deployed in American cities, and the picture is clear. Authoritarianism isn't foreign. It's already here. So what do we do about it? Look, there's no silver bullet, but I think there are steps we can take. First, we need to break up concentrated power. Just 5 corporations own most of US media, so just a handful of executives get to decide what millions of people hear and see. Pair that with tech monopolies controlling social media, and you get profit, not truth, driving the system.
Nice job, team.
Lena Khan, as Biden's FTC chair, pushed antitrust enforcement with numerous lawsuits against these monopolies. That fight against monopolies has to continue. Second, let's rebuild local journalism. Since 2005, the US has lost more than 3,000 newspapers. And just last year alone, 127 newspapers got shut down. That's about 2.5 per week. So now over half of American counties have little to no local news at all. When communities lose trusted outlets, they don't really know what's going on in their cities and towns. People turn to Facebook and Twitter and see these sensationalized headlines instead. That vacuum is exactly where disinformation thrives. Rebuilding local news isn't cheap, but it's necessary and doable if governments are willing to invest. If we don't, the information gap will just keep widening. Third, let's address the platforms. Stronger privacy rules could limit micro-targeting. Algorithm changes could stop outrage bait from flooding feeds, but that undercuts profits, so these companies are going to resist. So some argue that we need something bigger, an international agreement like the ones we have for climate and nuclear arms, an international agreement to regulate these platforms across borders. Others argue that the question is one of ownership. Social media doesn't have to be billionaire owned. One policy could force platforms above a certain size to transition into worker co-ops. That would mean employees, engineers, moderators, designers would collectively own the company and vote on major decisions. That shifts incentives. Instead of chasing Wall Street engagement metrics, worker owners would prioritize stability, trust, and long-term survival. They would be harder to capture by authoritarian governments or billionaire interests because decision-making would be dispersed across thousands of people, not concentrated in one CEO's hands.
No.
Or if that's politically unrealistic, we're also seeing experiments with decentralized systems like Blue Sky's AT protocol. The idea is that no single company controls your feed or your data. You could pick the algorithm you want, move your account between platforms, and not be locked into one company's ecosystem. If public money went toward companies building on these kinds of open protocols, it could help them grow faster and compete with the giants. Fourth, we can resist on the ground level. Go offline. Touch grass. We can organize locally, with your community, with your recreational groups, with your places of worship. Talk with family and friends if it's safe. Even the smallest conversations can add up over time. And don't let minor disagreements stop you. We need to build coalitions across the left, liberals, and independents.
Kids, stop fighting! Maybe Lisa's right about America being a land of opportunity, and maybe Adil has a point about the machinery of capitalism being oiled with the blood of the workers.
Nationally, the Democratic Party needs to move beyond neoliberalism and fundamentally change. Fascism fades when basic needs are met. I bet that many Trump voters weren't actually diehard MAGA. They just made a calculation. Do I vote for him for a shot at affordability, or do I risk democracy and stay broke? That calculation obviously failed, but if democracy doesn't deliver, the fantasy of a strongman or a benevolent leader increases.
Donald Trump, if you can hear us, please, Donald Trump, please save me. Please save me, Donald Trump, please.
I saw it in the Philippines, I see it here. That's why a new vision of America isn't optional. It's urgent. Look, none of these fixes alone are enough. But together, breaking up monopolies, rebuilding local journalism, regulating platforms, having real-life conversations, and pushing the Democratic Party to fundamentally change, we give democracy a fighting chance. Holy shit, that was a lot. But look, the situation isn't hopeless. Tyranny might look tough, but it's actually pretty fragile. Look at Duterte. For years, his regime seemed untouchable, backed by disinformation and brute force. But today, he's sitting in the fucking Hague, facing charges that cut through his strongman image. That's proof that authoritarianism can be challenged, but that's only true if pressure is applied, and accountability is demanded. Look, as my favorite show puts it, tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. And that's true here too. But only if we push back before it's too late.